Lakers were reportedly close to acquiring Buddy Hield from Sacramento. Perk, should the Kings still look to move Buddy, or should he stay one of Sacramento's leading men? How's that for my soap opera voice?
That was really
pretty good. Perk, what do you think?
Well, you know what? I actually love Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield's a hard-working guy. You know, Alvin Gentry, Anthony Davis, Rajon Rondo, all those guys prayed about how hard Buddy Hield worked, including Dale Demps. Here's the thing. I think that him and Luke Walton, they should have a coming to Jesus meeting and figure things out, because he's a good piece to put alongside Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox, and also they drafted well. So if they could come to amends and figure things out along with Harrison Barnes, Buddy Hield is a guy that is capable of going for 40. Buddy Hield is a guy that is capable of taking over a full quarter when you need it the most, coming up with timely baskets. So if him and Luke Walton could get on the same page, I think it could work out and he could remain with Sacramento.
First of all, this thing is like Days of Our Lives. Is this ever going to get canceled? Does it just go on forever and ever?
It's up to the Kings whether it gets canceled, and I got to tell you.
Look, Buddy Hield,
I agree. No reason to cancel it thus far.
I agree with Perk. I think Buddy Hield has become kind of an underrated player. He's one of the most prolific three-point shooters in the history of the league. His contract declines. I don't even think his contract is that bad. The problem is they have De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, and they just drafted Davion Mitchell. So the backcourt minutes are getting a little shrunk, and you can't play Buddy Hield at the 3 and survive on defense, and the Kings were terrible on defense last year, as it was. And they're cranky that they got left at the proverbial altar the other day in that Lakers trade. So I think this is not something that's going to stop. I don't know if they have anything actionable today, but I think we're going to keep hearing Buddy Hield noise, and I think some team might be happy when they end up with him, frankly.
I'm not so sure the Lakers are done trying to get Buddy Hield.
Well, this is what I was about to ask you. So is it real, their interest in him? Because we talk about the Lakers' three-point shooting needs. Obviously, number 2 in the league to Steph Curry and made three-pointers this past season.
I don't know how they get him.
The how is tricky.
The how is tricky, but I think they're going to try. They woke up that morning, Thursday morning, the morning of the draft, thinking they were trading for Buddy Hield. If Montrezl Harrell opted into his player option.
This wasn't just a front to get Washington to raise its offer.
No, they woke up that morning doing that deal. And all they needed to find out was whether Montrezl Harrell was going to pick up his player option in time, because he didn't have to do it that day.
Right.
He had until Sunday.
Yep.
And he picks up the option, but at the same time, in a call it was a surprise to the Lakers. The Washington trade, well, there had been informal talks.
Yeah.
Russ hadn't asked out at that point.
Right.
And they get a call from Tommy Shepard. It's back on, and it's on now because you have the draft coming up. But they woke up that morning thinking they're going to do the Buddy Hield trade. Now, I think the way you would have to do it is involve a third team. But they still have Dennis Schroder, the rights. They have the bird rights to Dennis Schroder, to Alex Caruso, to Taylor Horton. There's other constructions that they can do.
Trade possibilities.
I don't know how they pull it off. I think it's really difficult. But where there's a will, sometimes there's a way.
We'll find out. Still more drama in Sacramento. So there you go, Zach Lowe. The show keeps running. Guys, we are 18 minutes away from the free agency deadline. And as we've been talking, because of the enforcement on tampering rules, it's why you have not heard deal so far. But at 6 o'clock Eastern in 18 minutes, it's going to be a lot. So stick with us. We've also got Chris Bosh coming back to jump over with us. And I think we fixed Dave McMenamin's microphone. So we've got Ramona Shelburne, Dave, Kendrick Perkins, who stayed with us from ESPN. We are also going to welcome in Basketball Hall of Famer Chris Bosh. I'm going to just keep saying that over and over, Chris. And, I can't wait to see you with that jacket in just a couple months. We've got a lot of guests, too, throughout the next 4 hours. We are taking you through the beginning of NBA free agency and beyond, as they say. So we're in the middle of a conversation about the Lakers off season. And Chris, I do want to get you in here because they don't have a lot of cap flexibility after the deals allotted to LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook, who just joined them. So you have been in this position with the Heat where you guys had little pieces around the edges, use vet minimums after a lot of the salary went to you guys with the Heat. So how do you think the Lakers should approach this, and how much work does LeBron or Anthony Davis have to do calling guys saying, I know it's going to be less money, but will you come play with us?
Well, I mean, free agency is all about working the phones. I think the presidents and GMs have their say-so, but, you definitely want to have a say-so if you're a player yourself. And I think that's a lot is very powerful if you get a call from somebody wanting to play with you, especially when you're going to have to take less money. But in the Lakers instance, they're the Lakers. They're always chasing championships, and anytime you're in the business of championships, this is the flexibility or the maneuvering or the finesse that you have to have. They're going to have to surround all of the talent that they have right now with Mark, with their big three, and make sure they get shooting around them. I think we all know that LeBron, he has his style that he likes to have shooters around him. We all know what Anthony Davis brings. He's going to bring the muscle in the paint that they need. But Russell Westbrook is also going to be a force in the paint. He's going to play his game and play full court. They're going to have to surround those guys with shooters and, hopefully get some bargain prices of them. And I know there's plenty of guys out there who will join the Lakers, and we'll see what happens today.
Well, look, I'm glad CB brought up shooting because I'm tired of everybody overemphasizing spacing and shooting, because we just saw in this year's finals the way that Giannis dominated. The Milwaukee Bucks did not shoot well from the three-point line at all. But as long as you have superstar power, you could get the job done, right? In the finals, it's all about your superstars rising to the occasion. We saw Caldwell Pope. We saw Danny Green. We saw those guys struggle when the Lakers made their first run. Now, I get it. If you could go out and get a J.J. Redick on a vet minimum, then you got to go do that. If you can go out and get a Carmelo Anthony on a vet minimum, then you also got to go do that. I just feel like when it comes down to LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, and Anthony Davis, this has been a plan that they have been thinking about for a very long time. We know all of these guys are close friends. We know that LeBron James is getting to a point of his time in his career where he's going to be willing to make the necessary sacrifices, meaning maybe having to play the power forward position. Anthony Davis having to make the sacrifice of playing the center position and playing and let Russell Westbrook lead the charge. We know that Russell Westbrook could also be the facilitator on the team. Last year, he led the league in assists. He wants to get others involved. So I think when you have this much star power and you have a guy like Anthony Davis that could control the paint on both ends of the floor, then yeah, you can fill in the gaps a little bit. But with those three players, I like my chances.
Well, it is interesting, the gaps they do have to fill in. Dave, Perk just mentioned J.J. Redick. Who do you think they are targeting?
Well, they're targeting a lot because they need to. There's 11 open roster spots as they head into free agency. It could be less if they retain some of their own guys. Alex Caruso, Taylor Horton Tucker, they've already tendered a qualifying offer for THT that would lend us to believe that they're going to match whatever comes from the outside as a restricted free agent. But then you have the mid-level exception, which isn't all that much money because they're a taxpayer, only $5.9 million. So you'll be asking some of these people that could get more money on the outside market to come, and the veteran minimum. And so they, Perk, you're great, but three-point shooting is a huge part of today's game. They were 21st in the league in threes last year, and Perk mentioned J.J. Redick. That's a name. Wayne Ellington, a former Laker. There's another name. Trevor Ariza, Avery Bradley. And some of these guys, the good part about it, they can shoot the three, but they're not a one-dimensional player. They can provide the defensive intensity or certainly the veteran acumen that you bring to the group. But they got a lot of spots to fill, and it's going to be really interesting to see, do they target one player with this mid-level, or do they split it up and just say, we can offer you a little bit more than veteran minimum?
Well, it's certainly become more complicated just in terms of getting the right skill sets on the floor with Russ coming there. Obviously, the big stars felt like that was the move because we know they all got together. But Ramona, this is not the first time Russell Westbrook has tried to come to L.A., right? You had such an interesting detail this morning. Can you share that with our friends here?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's interesting that this Russ move we've all talked about. I feel like I've been on this show several times. We've talked about it. But in the summer of 2019, when we were all talking about Kawhi coming to the Lakers, the Clippers are going back to the
Would he bring someone with him?
Yeah, would he go there alone? One of the guys who took matters into his own hands was Russell Westbrook. Called up Kawhi and said, hey, I'm from LA, you're from LA. Is there a way we could make this work? Kawhi wasn't all that interested in that.
That's amazing.
Kawhi ends up calling Paul George saying, hey, I'd rather go with you But you should just know that I had a conversation with your guy, so if you don't want
So Kawhi basically said to Paul George, who was teammates with Russell Westbrook, and we remember the whole press conference and the concert and the whole thing, it's going to be the two of them. Kawhi called PG and said, hey, I don't know if you know this, Russ is looking to leave. Maybe you should leave and come with me instead.
Here's what
30s now. Steph is 33. They have, of course, added some promising young players through the draft, but very different timetable to have a bunch of 19-year-olds with Steph, Clay, and Draymond. So, Mark, where are the Warriors in terms of rebuilding and contending at the same time? Because we've talked about it on the show a lot. They tried to split the difference to a degree this past season with Klay Thompson out. They figured they'd try to sort of make both things happen with James Wiseman. And it did clog up the offense sometimes. And when James got hurt and was out for the rest of the season, that's when you saw Steph Curry sort of take off as an MVP candidate. So, Mark, how do you think they split that difference a little bit more this year so that they can be competitive?
Well, I think one way is Kelly Oubre's not back, so that changes the offense. I would not be surprised if somehow a sign and trade could be worked out for Kelly to go somewhere else. There's no real hot team right now, and his agent's diligently trying to get him a big payday for this 25-year-old swingman who doesn't have this isn't a big swingman market. So
Right.
I do think that Kelly expects to be patient. But with so many young guys, they need somebody like Haslam there. And I expect Andre Iguodala to come back. He still has a home in the East Bay. His son goes to school in Oakland still.
I didn't know that. All
So
right.
they have the mid-level
Family
exception.
ties.
They have the veteran minimum.
Yep.
Joe Lacob said they want to bring in veterans. So did their GM. And they're going to retire Iguodala's jersey, right? So to me, it only makes sense for him to go there now and for his future post-basketball.
unless he feels like going to LA with the Lakers at the
There's that. There's his buddy Pelinka.
You know, the thing about
His
Kelly
agent, right?
Oubre.
I mean, just to make the point, right? Pelinka used to be his agent, right?
Okay. Iguodala's agent, yeah. The thing about Kelly Oubre, the Warriors had deals for him at the deadline. They could have saved a lot of money at the last trade deadline doing a deal. It was for Spencer Dinwiddie and some. It was basically salary cap relief. They chose not to do it because they don't like giving up assets just for salary cap relief. So as Mark said, I look for them to try to do some kind of sign and trade. The Knicks, the Spurs, the Mavericks are teams to watch for Kelly Oubre, but I think Mark's right that it's going to take a little while to materialize. What's interesting with the Warriors, Rach, is that they are trying to play this game where you want to contend now, but then also have like the second shift coming in.
Right.
And the Spurs did that. We talked about them wanting to be like the Spurs.
Yep.
20 years is how you make the playoffs over and over. They did try to go get Bradley Beal.
Yep.
They did, but Bradley Beal's not available right now. So the time to get him was at the draft when you had the 7 and 14 picks. That window passed. But I still think that they're going to be aggressive with the young assets that they have, with the young players that they have, because Steph Curry has that extension out there. I expect him to sign it. I don't think that's going to be any issue. But there's still a pressure to try to give Steph Curry a championship-level team around him. And maybe, Mark, you're right. Maybe it's enough to get Iguodala back and fill out the roster with a Nick Batum type or a playmaking guard. There's going to be a lot of point guards available. So they have a chance here. But there is a couple of home run offers they could still try and make. So I don't think Golden State's done.
Rach, I have serious doubts as to whether or not they can win another title with this core. So they think they can contend. I think a lot of people around the league are wondering, is this really possible? And this speaks to what Ramona's saying. To me, guys, the Warriors are the most fascinating team in the league heading into this season because they've got a starting lineup, assuming Clay's back and healthy, anchored by 3 Hall of Famers in Steph, Clay, and Draymond. And then they've got a bench anchored by like the G League All-Star team with Wiseman and Kuminga and Moody and guys who need a lot more time to develop. So can you merge those two and still win? I don't believe so, but I think one of the reasons that they swung the way they did in that draft and they picked guys that have a lot of potential is because not only are they going to develop them in their redeveloped coaching staff that is focusing a lot more right now on player development, they can say to teams when another star comes on the market, and somebody always does that we're not expecting, hey, you can have 3 lottery picks potentially, and you can get them to the next point together on your own team. So that's where the Warriors are in the moment. They're hoping these guys turn into players over time. They're hoping that Wiseman takes that next step. But either way, they can package those guys down the line potentially to get the star that Steph, Draymond, and Clay would love to play with and have one more run with in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I know there are frustrated Warriors fans out there. I read a lot of sort of, well, why did they make those picks? They should have traded those picks for a star on Steph Curry and Clay's timeline. If that human had been out there, I'm sure that Bob Myers would have gone and tried to make a trade for him. But as you mentioned, Ramona, Bradley Beal, not available. So at some point, you can only make, yes.
Why can't Wiggins be that guy for them?
Well, but in terms of people saying, oh, why didn't you go get someone?
I mean, if Clay is back, he's their star.
Right.
Steph is their star. When Harrison Barnes was there, Harrison Barnes wasn't Kevin Durant. Mm-hmm. But when I'm like Perk now.
Good.
Harrison Barnes was there.
It works for him, it'll work for you.
Yeah. They won the championship with Harrison in that role. Wiggins played great in that role, and then if he's the third guy, I think he could do it. Wiseman, we'll see if he can come back. But I like Kuminga probably a lot more than most, but to me, Wiggins could be that guy.
Yeah.
That could be the third guy, because whoever coming in is the third guy.
Well, Draymond Green there, too, obviously just plays a very different role than any of the names we're talking about. But
he's whatever guy they need him to be.
He's on that team, a Defensive Player of the Year finalist this year, so still got it in a lot of ways. And we saw him with James Wiseman and how his impact on their young players is still really significant.
Is it just about having a sexy name? Like, I just don't get the fascination with having.
Look, when you have Steph Curry, he's Steph Curry.
That's why you don't necessarily.
He can be.
If you got Steph and Clay, then whoever the third guy is, to me, is
Well, you also need somebody who's okay with that. Okay.
What's that?
You also need somebody who's okay coming in to join the super team. We saw the blowback Kevin Durant got. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kevin Durant won 2 titles there, Finals MVP, and all he hears is, "Oh, you joined the super team."
Yeah.
And whoever you're targeting as a star, that's in the back of their head too.
I don't think it's going to be the same this time, though. If someone did come and join this group, it's very different from when they were that dominant, oh my God, overpowering everyone.
It's not going to be a KD level
It's
guy.
not going to feel, it's not going to feel like someone.
Even a Bradley Beal
I know, but I'm kind of with Mark. I just think that whoever comes in won't be under that same pressure and microscope that Kevin was, because there was a whole extra thing that had nothing to do with the Warriors that was about Kevin Durant. And there are some people who felt like, oh my gosh, Kevin has got to win one on his own, which I never understand, because no person has ever in the history of the NBA won a title on their own. Yeah. But there was a lot of backlash about that. Now, we keep saying, well, because they have Steph Curry, because of who Steph Curry is. You got to have Steph Curry to keep having these conversations. So, Nick, I asked the folks on set earlier, but I wanted to get your take as well. Steph, in the last year of his contract, as we've discussed, he is eligible for that 4-year, $215 million extension. By the way, I should say $215.4 million extension, because that's $400,000. And I would like if someone just did a rounding error and handed me $400,000. So I don't want to cheat Steph of his. That would keep him under contract through the 25-26 season. It would give him an average salary of $53 million a year, a number I don't want to let that pass either. Now, if he decided he's just going to let it ride, he would become a free agent in 2022. The deal he would sign with another team would be pretty similar when you also think about the endorsements he could make. But he could also just decide, hey, I'm going to let it ride for a year and then re-sign with Golden State. Either way, he could become the first player in NBA history to sign 2 deals worth more than $200 million. Maybe if you have actually signed more than $400 million in contracts, you don't need that $400,000. Nick, I don't know. He can give it to us if he doesn't want it. Do you feel confident he will sign an extension this offseason, regardless of what the front office does?
Yes, because we all 4 of us have had the same conversation with Steph over the course of the last couple of years. And he has only ever said, I want to play with one team, and I want to play here, and I want my legacy to be that I only wore one jersey, and I want my statue outside Chase Center.
Yeah.
And so if you believe him, and I wholeheartedly do, because of the connection that he's formed out here in the Bay, then that is what he's looking for. The money doesn't hurt. It's awesome. And Rach, that stat is incredible that he's going to be the first guy to sign 2 $200 million deals.
$400 million plus.
He's
He
worth
has
it.
stuck to the same message all along, and I don't think that's going to change at all.
Yes, and absolutely, by the way, you're right. He is worth the $500 million. I would absolutely,
Probably
if I'm Joe
more.
Lacob, feel pretty good about that.
Hey, he needs a statue outside of Lake Merritt in Oakland, too.
Yes, well, yeah.
True. Can I read you a quote? Can I read you a quote
sure,
from Steve
go
Kerr?
ahead.
Okay. He's so damn good, we need to maximize this stretch. You have to enjoy what he's doing as a fan and appreciate what he's doing organizationally, then do everything we can to build the best team around him. It's not like we owe him. It's more like that's what we need to do.
I mean, this is, and again, I was consistent with this when LeBron was in his second stint in Cleveland. You only have so many more years of getting this elite level, one of the best players in the history of the NBA on your team. You have to do everything you can. The future will take care of itself. If you can win even one more title with him, that will matter. And by the way, you know who knows that very well? The Golden State Warriors, who, of course, went through a lot of lean years.